Hello, hi, how are you? Thanks for clicking this video. You know, YouTube is something I think about all the time, and I overthink sometimes. I think a lot. I started this channel a long time ago just for this and that. The channel became a Adderall support group as I process my own withdrawal from Adderall, and then I did write this book, Hocus Focus, Coming of Age with ADD and Its Medicines. But that book is about my experience with ADHD and its medications, and I was really devoted to writing that book. And then for a while I was disillusioned into thinking that my channel had to be a vessel for my book. So if I wasn't producing something that was like supporting my book, I just wouldn't make it, and I got kind of scared of being on YouTube again. So I want to relax a little bit, just, you know, because in the process of writing this book, I became obsessed with books. I just read all the time, and I love writing, and I wanna just be myself again and not think that I have to be the getting off of Adderall guy, because I'm off Adderall. I've been off Adderall for a long time, and I'll continue to make content that supports people who are getting off Adderall. But what's kind of cool is a lot of people who come to my channel to get off Adderall, they get what they need and they move on, and I've moved on. You know, Adderall isn't really a big part of my life at all, but there are people who come to my channel in the time of need, and I'm so grateful that I can help support them when they're thinking about getting off Adderall. But you know, when they're off Adderall, they don't need to hear this anymore because it's not on their mind. That's what's great about quitting Adderall just in general, is once you're off, you're good, you're clear, once you're in the clear. But what I want to talk about, in the process of writing Hocus Focus, I became a reader. I love books, so I read all the time, and I watch people on YouTube talk about their books, so I'm just gonna kind of talk about the 4 books that I read in January. And I'm just gonna do something real quick. I read Mary Oliver's Poetry Handbook. I read Neil Gaiman, American Gods. I read Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and I read A Scanner Darkly by Phillip K Dick. So I'm going to talk about them in chronological order. The first book I read this year was Mary Oliver's Poetry Handbook. This was great because I'm in a writing group that involves poetry, and I really am like, I always write journals, but I'm not really, and you know, yeah, I consider a lot of what I write poetic. You can read it on my Substack, link below if you want to read my half-hearted participation in a daily poetry challenge. That's where you can find it. But reading this actually was really good because I was just writing poetry that was just like, yeah, these are words, but Mary Oliver really stresses the importance of meter, rhyme, and stanzas and lines, and kind of the nuts and bolts of poetry that I sort of felt myself empowered that I abandoned. Like, oh, I just do my, and it's, you know, it's good to know what you're doing. Again, if you want to read my poetry, it's there. This is a short but like dense read. I really sat with a lot of it. I don't have any of my poetry. I'll read a poem. I'll read one of my poems. You know, I like that she referenced, there was one poem in here that is someone else's poem that I just loved. Let me see if I can get it. Ah, yes. Here's the poem I liked. This is a poem called The Round by Stanley Kunitz. Light splashed this morning on the shell-pink anemones, swaying on their tall stems down blue-spiked Veronica. Light flowed in rivulets over the humps of the honeybees this morning. I saw light kiss the silk of the roses in their second flowering, my late bloomers, flushed with their brandy. A curious gladness shook me. So I have shut the doors of my house, so I have trudged downstairs to my cell, so I am sitting in semi-dark, hunched over my desk, with nothing for a view to tempt me but a bloated compost heap, steamy old stink pile under my window, and I pick my notebook up and I start to read aloud the still wet words I scribbled on the blotted page. Light splashed. I can scarcely wait till tomorrow when a new life begins for me, as it does each day, as it does each day. I love this poem because it really highlights that you go out in the world to see something beautiful and rush into your terrible den, you know, like this place here isn't as beautiful as the world outside, but this is where I process it. It's the compost heap of my life. Is this little nook I have up here is where what I take in and what gets thrown into my body, my spirit, my mind, my life gets processed, digested, fermented, turned into something beautiful, if I'm willing to be an active participant in it. That's what I get out of that poem, is the beauty of like getting out there, processing the world, bringing it into yourself, and creating a poem or whatever you choose to create. I think that's really cool. But I think this is great for people who already write, because that's who I am, as someone who writes a lot, and I've always kind of dabbled in what I call poetry, just short prose or just verbose collections of feelings, moments, and scenes, and I like doing that, but this helped give me some structure, because sometimes when you're creative all over the place, structure helps you put it in a container that actually allows you to be even more creative. So very solid, and Mary Oliver is a champion of poetry, and I really when I read, I try to give, so there's this thing, like when I go to a concert and it's a small band, I dance, try to get other people to dance. I let it ride. I want, I don't give things stars. It's 5 stars. I don't like to rate it, because if I don't give a book 5 stars, I think it's on me in some ways. I mean, some books I just put down. They suck. But I try to get the most out of every book, and I try to make the reading experience 5 star, and that's on me. So even if I'm reading a book that is, bad, it's on me to interpret its badness to make it a beneficial experience, to make that examination. I mean, a lot of that happened when I was writing Hocus Focus. I read all the other Adderall memoirs out there, and a lot of them were bad because you haven't heard of them. They're very, I'm not going to bring them up, but they're out there, and reading them, they were not, they were first drafts, a lot of them. They needed work, but they were showing me things because I was willing to pay attention to it. So from there, and once you develop like a reading habit, even a book that's not great, you can have a 5-star experience. And this would be a 5-star book on its own. It's a great book, but I'm just saying it was up to me to process these things. I'd read a little bit, and then I'd scribble in my journal, and I made it a poetry workshop for myself. And anyone who wants to do that, check it out. I'll read you one of my poems. Okay, again, if you want to read like the poetry I've been writing and the other things I've been writing, my Substack link is there. I'm having fun with it. So there's a little decomposition book. I liked writing in a small book. Usually I have a 5x7, but this, it's when you write by hand, you end up using the size of the page and the length of the line as a guidance for your writing. So that's another limitation to put on it. All right. Here's a poem. I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm just going to read it. It's yours, young and beautiful. Release yourself in here. All which no longer serves, placed in this crucible, and sent to the all to be composted, digested, and forever changed. Pungent fragrance becomes barren air. To all this, when I'm done, it's all yours. I am finished. Take it how you want. I don't know. So, it's a good book. Alright, next on the list is a little bit radioactive, because the next book I read is American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Am I running out of time? Hang on. Oh god, I knocked over a whole bunch of coins. Hang on, something came off my camera here. So like, Neil Gaiman, I wasn't reading it, and I wasn't like, wow, this is really good writing. But a lot of times I was like, okay, this is enough that I'm gonna read the next word. And I was even talking to someone about it, and I was like, yeah, it's stupid, but it's not bad, And he was like, why would you read something that's stupid? And I was like, I mean, maybe goofy. I don't know. It just seemed pretentious and everything like that. And, I don't know if this interpretation I'm making is because I'm trying to join in the slander against Neil Gaiman for being a bad guy. And, he had like this Scientology background. There's a lot of weird stuff about him. But about it as a book, I would say it's a fine airplane book. If you're traveling, the kind of book you buy on the airplane. And there was some stuff in there that's really going to help me with my book. The way that he took a lot of like liberties narratively that allowed me to let go of some of the way I'm writing, where I'm like, I can't do that. It's like, well, you can. He proved that you can do some things that I'm doing in my fiction book, which I'm really excited about. That's the other book I read. The third book I read, definitely my favorite book of the month, was Keith Harrison's verse translation of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. This, I was at my favorite used bookstore, Wonder Book, and I had a free book at the end of the thing, and I was like, oh god, I've already spent 20 minutes in the store trying to find a book, and now I have the pressure of like, find one now. So I just went to the medieval section, and I saw an Oxford classic, must be good. So I picked it up, and I read it in a day, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and I loved it, because, knights are great. Like, knights, I didn't read medieval literature, really, and I was like, wow, this is fun. And it was an adventure, and it was cool. And it presented part of being a knight that I never really considered, which was like chastity and respecting women. And I mean, opposite Neil Gaiman failed, you know, but the character, the Gawain, you know, he is faced with an opportunity with this woman. I mean, spoilers and stuff like that. And it was just like an interesting game. Like, it was all games. It was Christmas games, and the Green Knight comes and he gives a crazy Christmas game. He's like, you can cut my neck and then I get to cut yours a year later. And he's kind of like, well, you'll be dead. And he chops off his head, and the guy's like, all right. He picks up his own head, holds it to Gawain, and says like, I'll see you in a year. And it's kind of like, oh, you didn't expect that. So I mean, it's about like honor, truth, and I think these are great stories for people. They have good morals, and I picked up the Morte d'Arthur to follow it more on the Arthurian legends because I loved this so much. And I watched the movie, which is wild. And I like to read a book and then watch the movie right away, and because it's fresh in my mind. And I don't compare the two. I know that the book inspired the movie, and I want to see how a director who read a book decided to interpret it. I don't compare the two. I'm really not a rating or comparison. I like to just let it in. And the movie was totally wild, cinematically amazing. They took so many creative liberties. There's one part in the poem where like it's like, yeah, and Gawain went on some adventures on his way, and they really had fun with that part. And they it was interesting because there were some parts of me that were like, is this about like what I think it's about? And then in the movie the director's like, yeah, I think so. And I was like, that's what I thought. It was kind of vague. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. You can write about it in the comments what the thing was with the woman of the house where he was staying on his journey. It was just kind of like, well, that was interesting. And I liked the movie. I watched it with my wife, and I think she would have been totally lost if I was in there going like, oh yeah, I see what they're doing. Oh, okay, I see what they're doing. All right, the last book I read this month was Phillip K Dick, A Scanner Darkly. This book was laying in my brother's old bedroom at my parents' house. He bought it September 15th, 2012. I know because the receipt's in there, in Seattle. But I read it, and it reminded me a lot of my time on amphetamines and quitting amphetamines. Of course, it's another sci-fi book. I'm trying to do some sci-fi. If anyone has any recommendations, yes, I know Dune. But if there's any other like interesting recommendations, I'm kind of like in the speculative fiction place where it's our world, but something's a little tweaked, and this tweaks with the way that the substance D is not a normal substance. But yeah, some context. I used to take amphetamines, and I tried to quit amphetamines, and a lot of the sort of tail chasing that happens with the characters was reminiscent for me of like, oh yeah, amphetamines, you know, that's what happens on amphetamines. You start behaving this way. I remember all of this, yes. So I thought that was cool in a way. Again, it wasn't like jaw-droppingly good, and I know that Phillip K Dick was a big amphetamines guy. You could see in my Brave Little Toaster video, I talk about him at the end because he had a beef with the writer of the Brave Little Toaster, but he had he wrote these like paranoid letters out, and he had a candy dish full of amphetamines. But there was something in here I liked that I marked for this. He had this kind of description here that I thought was kind of good, about like frying your soul on psychedelics pretty much, that because one day it came over him, he began to realize that he was never going to see God again. He was going to live out his whole remaining life, decades, maybe 50 years, and see nothing but what he had always seen, what we see. He was worse off than if he hadn't seen God. He told me one day he got really mad. He just freaked out and started cursing and smashing things in the apartment. He even smashed the stereo. He realized he was going to have to live on, and like he was, seeing nothing, without a purpose, just a lump of flesh grinding along, eating, drinking, sleeping, working, grabbing. It's kind of a bummer of a book because it was about people ruining their lives with drugs. But if you want to read a book that has someone who almost ruins his life with drugs but turns things around, I recommend Hocus Pocus, Coming of Age with ADD and Its Medicines. It's the book I wrote about ADHD and Adderall and stuff. If you want to read it, let me know. Maybe I'll just send you a copy if you really want, but it's also on Amazon. And I love books. I love writing. Please let me know what books you like. I'm gonna, I don't know what I'm doing. I do, but I don't at the same time. I'm trying out just chatting about videos because I write scripts and I overthink my YouTube videos a lot, and I think I should just be myself and just share. I wish I had a friend to read with these books. I don't really have a reading partner, but I know that I go to YouTube to see people reading books, so maybe you want to talk about those 4 books, and maybe I'll do this again and see you at the end of February after I read something. Right now I'm reading Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke. So, If you want to hear me talk about books, if you want to see a video essay I have about loneliness, male loneliness, third spaces, and Moby Dick, I've been working on that script for a year. The video might take me a year too, because I'm going to actually shoot it, but I don't care. I love making art, and the art I'm making right now is about male loneliness and Moby Dick, and it's really... Okay, my camera died, but I'm just going to continue this video. What I was saying, if you want to be my friend on the internet, if you want to participate in this, then just subscribe, follow, like, I don't know. Because I'm not doing this with any expectation other than just reaching out and feeling people who read these books, and I don't know. I just want to feel connected. So, see you later.